working at the World Bank and multiple other UN agencies. Now, as elected myself as a director at Data Science Limited and the executive director of the Institute for Development Data. My work focuses on liberating data and building Africa's data infrastructure. So trying to figure out how we can bring people, systems, and data in a way that is seamless and in a way that is useful for African governments specifically and institutions that use data for public good. Thanks.
Hello everyone, my name is Liana Suchodolska. I am leading a team called Data Use and Impact in Paris 21, and Paris 21 is something that stands for Partnership in Statistics for the Development in the 21st Century, but yes, we are based in Paris. So I'm very happy to be here. I am probably not the only one who's not a data scientist, but I've been crunching data all my life, but since 7 years I've been working more around politics of data. So what makes data being uptaken by policymakers, by parliaments, media. I came to Paris 21 through the angle of gender statistics, so this LNOB is not a new thing for me. We've been working a lot engaging civil society and seeing how their data can be heard in official statistics. And of course, today we are 2026. I cannot escape the topic of AI, so I'm really thrilled to be in this panel, and I'm looking forward to this discussion with all of you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So as you can see, we have quite diverse representation, even if we are all technical data people, from big tech, I'll call Safaricom big tech, to academia, to innovation ecosystems, and then the global statistical ecosystem. Right. So I will get started with you, Lynette. And you, as you explained, you've worked in this space for quite some time and build innovations using data. But I want to, to link a bit of what you're doing with the, official statistics. And are you able to share like how potentially you use statistics in your innovations and how when you bring in data science and AI, then you can meaningfully utilize the statistics, but also contribute back to the statistical system.
Yeah, thank you, Leo. I like to argue that the government is the largest collector and custodian of data about any country, really. So it's impossible, no matter how much data you collect, to use it in isolation and to use it independently without enriching it with government statistics. For a very long time, I've been collaborating with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, for example, for over 16 years, I would say. And I like to encourage people to find ways of working with the data. I'll take us back to when I was running the Kenya Open Data Initiative in the tech ecosystem. We would still find people saying that there is not enough data in the country. And until today, when you ask people what's the biggest issue with data, they say, we don't have enough data, which is absolutely not true. I think what we lack is skills to be able to use the data that is there. We have a lot of data. The other day, 2 days ago, I was quite glad that I managed to get the statistical abstract from the KNBS. I've been collecting the books for as long as I have known KNBS, so I have a whole stash. And it's a big book, right? But when you look through the book, unless you're as passionate as I am about numbers, it's difficult sometimes to tell a story out of it or to be able to use it. And the data that you get there sometimes is in aggregates, and you need raw data. So I like to argue that there's a lot of data that is collected by companies, by individuals, by researchers, by governments, but we need the skills to be able to make use and sense of that data. Those skills are really lacking, and we need to really work hard, towards that. We have many, universities and schools. So data and numeracy is something that we are really lacking, and we see companies then end up doing small initiatives because they say we don't have the data. But if you went and spent, when I started my company in 2013, I used to go to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics library at Herufi House in town and sit there for hours just documenting, the data from the books, because at that point the data was not available in soft formats, at least not for free for a startup at that time. So we used to go sit there and open our Excel sheets and copy all the numbers and then go and use that. So one, moving from the public sector and feeding that into the private sector, that data is very useful. And then now I'd like to flip this again for those who were here yesterday, and there was a launch by Safaricom and Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and the collaboration. I must mention that 5 years ago, I actually started that training for Safaricom and that conversation with Safaricom, KNBS, and trainings with Positium to what we were calling access to privately held data. Privately held data is also very useful, and it also fills the gaps that official statistics do not necessarily have. For instance, I argue that the official number of the population of Kenya is dated 2019 years. Until 2029, that will be the most official number, right? But in 2026, is the population of Kenya still 49 million? You will hear people saying Kenya has a population of 54 million or 50 million. There's varying numbers. But if we got data from hospitals, births and deaths, we should be able to estimate that beyond what I call book formulas of population growth, because different things also affect population growth, right? So this is me saying in closing that there is a lot of opportunities, of course, without answering your question directly about what we are doing as Data Science Limited, but there's a lot of opportunities for companies to use data, official statistics, but there's also a bigger opportunity for private data, and I know KNBS has the citizen-generated data guidelines as well, including citizen-generated data into official statistics. There's another big opportunity in that, and we need to find a solution for bridging that gap. Yeah.
All right, I still think you have the solutions. I'll come back to you and probe a little bit more about that. But you raised the issue about the capacity to use that data. And when I was applying for my undergraduate, I went to the School of Math, and statistics was one of the courses, together with actuarial science, the one I did, and I think it was just the two of them, I can't remember. But I think now it's changing. There's a lot more computationally intensive courses. So to you, Dr. Betsy, how is Strathmore University positioning itself to create this new talent that then brings AI, data science into statistics, but also into the industry?
Right. So like you said, it used to be siloed. So you have computer scientists, you have mathematicians, but data science and AI is kind of breaking that barrier. And the key challenge is that you have mathematicians who can't code, and you have computer scientists who can't do the math, the really nitty-gritty algebra and calculus. And so at Strathmore, we decided to figure out how to bridge that gap. And so at the Strathmore Institute of Mathematics, there is the Bachelor in Statistics and Data Science, where hopefully, because it's new, we hope to sort of train statisticians who can also, build Python code. I think the key thing that we normally hear is that, mathematicians learn to code R when they write it down. Whereas AI now needs a lot of Python coding, and so how can we're trying to bridge that gap at the undergraduate level as well as the master's level. So you have the master's in data science and analytics, where we see a lot of people who are sort of trying to upskill. So a lot of it's a very mixed bag. So you have people in economics, people from computer science, people from math, trying to get those skills that sort of bring those two together. We try as much as possible to bridge both the theory and the applied. It's mostly applied analytics with AI. There's also, I guess, people also willing to upskill. So there are certificate programs in data science and analytics, not just at Strathmore, many other propping up. We also do customized training. We have a smart academy whereby students who are looking to, so you have a computer science student who wants to gain skills in data science and analytics. They come in as a Smart Academy intern, and they're given projects and proof of concepts to work on to just get them those skills that are market ready, and maybe even chart a path for them beyond what they are currently studying, because I think AI is becoming more and more multidisciplinary. And so having those, so if you're doing physics especially, or if you're doing engineering, they're starting to get more interested in, AI, both the computing and the math angles.
All right, and I'm assuming that part of these applied also means engagement with industry. What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's looking at, can we solve for problems within Kenya or Africa at large? We've tried as hard as possible to get industry partnerships. So for the School of Computing, undergraduate theses are now industry-led. For some of them, whereby you get an industry partner who has a problem that they want a solution, and instead of doing, you get a student who's in their 4th year, 5th year, to develop solutions for that as part of their final year project. For our master's students, we find a lot of them are already in employment, and so they build solutions. So we've had students from KRA, students from KPA, Kenya Pipeline, who are building now solutions for their organizations. So yeah, so that's that, but it can be more. I feel like we can do more, especially engaging governments. Again, they're the biggest holders of data. So can they bring that data to universities for us to, work on it for our masters and undergraduate students? Yeah.
Thank you. For you, Asila, Lynette put out a call to action in terms of that there is this opportunity for privately held data to support what government is producing and publishing, whether it's in the form of statistics or open data. The many initiatives you've had, please share a little bit more about how you are using, privately held data Safaricom is producing in conjunction with official statistics. But at the same time, what would be that incentive for your data to be more available to innovators in the ecosystem if there are deficiencies, for instance, within the official statistics, like privately held data such as yours could help fill?
Yep, thanks. So before I try to answer your question, I would like just to make a clarification that when I said I'm responsible for, it doesn't mean that I'm the business leader. I'm just a data scientist who supports those business teams. I thought that I should get out clearly. Now, on to your question. The role that private sector, and more specifically, I'll speak for my employer, Safaricom, should play is more of a complementary one, not necessarily replacing what the official statistics body for the country is doing. So what are we doing? So I think for those of you who were here yesterday, we, together with KNBS, announced that we'll be having a partnership just to enrich and enhance the national statistics collection. And part of what we are doing, part of the use cases that we are solving for is the dynamic population use case. So basically what we want to look at is give insights on how mobility patterns across the country are looking like, both day and night. Possibly try to understand what are the economic activities and patterns that we can glean out of the privately held data that we have. And more so, what would be the sort of incentive for Safaricom to do this? I think the incentive would be data for good. So provide these insights to the policy making arms of government to ensure that we have very targeted initiatives across the country that solve for problems within marginalized populations of the country. I think from a personal perspective, Data for Good will be the greater initiative that will drive the incentive for Safaricom to engage in such. Now, private sector can play a very important role. Why? Because privately held data is, for lack of a better word, more real time. And I think just to give perspective, at Safaricom, we kind of process data at a huge scale. On a daily basis, we collect about 4 terabytes of data, and that's just a quarter of what we can collect. In terms of the events that we process per day, we process around 2 billion events. So just to put into perspective, anytime you sit with your phone, just doing nothing, every other 5 seconds, your phone generates an event or a data event just by communicating to what we locally call the boosters, the BTS stations, the masts. So comparative to the national body, that is more real-time data. And in terms of processing capacity, we have the capacity to generate that data and store it within our data lakehouse. So our data lakehouse is some form of data warehouse, though slightly advanced. We have an SLO of 15 milliseconds. From storage to insights generation, we have some use cases that we've solved for a latency of around 100 milliseconds. So that is just to put perspective as to how real time we can get so as to complement what the Bureau of Statistics had. I don't think I want to belabor the point that it takes a long time for the Bureau of Statistics to decimate statistics for the country, but this kind of collaboration could enable us give more up-to-date insights about the population.
Thank you very much. Now, to you, Liliana, when you take a step back, I think, unfortunately, you'll have to answer for all the statistical agencies, given that we don't have others on the panel. At Paris 21, you're building their capacity then also to move forward with these new methodologies, AI and data science. What are you seeing as significant gaps in institutional readiness? And then how does AI and data science more practically start filling these gaps? What are you seeing that's common in these countries? Basically giving us a lay of the land right now.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. And I realized I told you what Paris 21 is, but I didn't say what we do. And I think you could guess from the question. So we support statistics offices in low and middle income countries to build their capacities for producing and using better data, so that this data informs policy making. Okay, so of course AI is not a new topic to us. It's not particularly my expertise. My colleagues who are not here on the forum are dealing with this. But yes, we are trying to upskill statistics office in that matter. Of course, now all bigger organizations respect themselves developing frameworks for AI readiness, and so are we. So that there is a common understanding of what is needed. So we have, of course, an AI readiness speed framework that states some of the dimensions and key capacities that need to be strengthened. But I'd like to talk about these capacities also from an old standing data problems, right? So your AI systems and your AI uptake is going to bump into a wall at some point, and that's the wall of how you handle data. What's your data infrastructure? What's your physical infrastructure for data? What's your organizational capacity to handle those new challenges? How you upskill staff? How you engage with the wider ecosystem? And I'm very happy and privileged to be here in Kenya, of course, because of the trailblazing role of KMDS in setting that precedent of being a very proactive agency. So I'm glad to hear about the Safaricom partnership. There's plenty of partnerships going all the way. They are operationalizing citizen-generated data. They are working with various actors of the data ecosystem. So our role is to provide a peer learning platform. So we have a task team on AI that gathers some of the data scientists from statistics offices in low and middle income countries. They exchange every month. We document how these use cases look. So it's on our website. You can check it out, paris21.org, and the cases are there. So they can be ranging really from problems like livestock counting, using satellite imagery, that's what we did in Mongolia, to solving even lack of gender data indicators problems we did in Rwanda through the Gender Data Lab, where we're trying to meet the policymaker use problem, whereby a policymaker can come to a chatbot, which is built by the statistics office. They can type their natural language question, okay, well, what's the number of schools in that village, and they will get the answer only within the limit of official statistics. And that's I think, also the value, because what we see is that when we talk about AI, there are two problems. There's this upstream problem, whereby, yes, we need AI solutions to improve our data collections, improve how surveys and then improve how data quality looks, but we also recognize the problem that official statistics is not plugged into the AI, commercial AI chatbots. So each time you type your question to your ChatGPT, Gemini's, Copilots, you're not getting official statistics, and that's a huge, huge problem. So make that AI ready, make that statistics AI ready, sorry. It's a whole lot of problems, of course. This is the metadata structure, right? So how do you make your data machine readable? That's one. And the final problem, and that's the most important, and I think we will have a couple of minutes to discuss it, how do you make AI work for the data to be used? Your parliamentarians, we had a session in the parliament yesterday at KMBS. They are also using ChatGPTs and Geminis to solve their problems. But the official statistics is not there, right? The public money went to the official statistics production, but you're not getting the public value of this, and that's a huge problem, right? So how do we work on that? And I hope we will have some answers from the community here. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Now, we've sort of gotten a lay of the land from our different perspectives, but I wanted us now to hone in more deeply into the inclusive, the collaboration, and the equitable aspect of this conversation. And starting with you, Lynette, you had talked about, how KMBS has these citizen-generated data guidelines to be able to incorporate some of these data that is being produced elsewhere in a way into official statistics. But I think that speaks to the question of quality, yeah? How do we ensure that if we are augmenting or supplementing official statistics with alternative data, it is of high quality, but beyond being of high quality, that we use that opportunity to be more inclusive, to reach these marginalized communities that Asila talked about. So from your experience, what does that data pipeline look like? How do you ensure that this data collected either from the grassroots level or outside of the official statistics systems is of high quality, is equitable, when it now shows up in like your innovations or in the in data science apps, etc.
Great, thanks. I'll probably start with her last submission, Liliana, on how do we then move from official statistics to something that is also useful, even before we start from the ground up. One of the solutions, that we have been looking into is what we are calling that last mile dissemination of official statistics, laws, and policies. And one of the solutions, and my colleague Jackie is here, is a solution called Raia, which allows citizens to really engage with different policies that exist. So for instance, for Kenyans in the room, you know that the finance bill is there. We are not all trained lawyers. So sometimes you might look at it and it might not make sense. You know, to what Dr. Betty was talking about, combining different disciplines. For you to fully understand the finance bill as it is, you need to be a lawyer, you need to be an accountant, and to a certain level, you need to be a politician, right? But then do we have those engines that allow you as a citizen to go in and just ask, as a small business owner, how does the finance bill actually help me? Or how does it not help me? So solutions like that, like Raia, that allow you then to be able to engage. So doing that last mile connectivity. And we need more engines like those, right? Because there's a lot of government statistics that live in books, that live in websites that we do not have that chance to be able to engage with. So how do we actually bring it down to the citizen? And now going into your question, Leo, on quality and inclusivity when it comes to statistics, there have to be guidelines. And I think in most cases, what really lacks is the guideline. Many years ago, when I used to argue against government including data from private sector organizations, there used to be a popular company, I can talk about it, I like to be honest, it's called HACO, and they doctored their financial books to look good to investors. Now, if the government had taken that, the information that they were providing, and included that in official statistics, that would have been, a big menace. And of course, people would hang the government for that. I like to argue that for civil servants, there's no reward in doing and failing, but it's okay if you don't do and nothing changes, right? So government tends to be a very risk-based, entity. Governments all over the world when you see them, so not just Kenya or African governments. So there have to be guidelines, and as I mentioned, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has developed the citizen-generated data guidelines that guide how governments, including citizen-generated data, can look at quality, frequency of that data collection, documentation, and how to bring that on board. And it's something that, and I do not speak for KNBS, I just like to champion good solutions. It's something that can also be used by private companies and social impact organizations, because they also collect data from the ground. My company does research, and when we started doing research, boots on the ground, you send people out, they send you, the data for a survey, they send you the data and you're okay. Until we integrated, GIS, and then you realize someone is at home sending you numbers, so those numbers become questionable. So how do you then ensure? So we have innovated over the last, 10 years in improving how data is collected. But the methods that we have used, we have never published them anywhere. So no one really knows what we know and how we have improved our services, because that's also our competitive, and business age. So having those guidelines that dictate how the data is actually collected and the quality that is acceptable, and also sensitizing the people who are going to collect that data, I think is very, very important. I know that national bureaus of statistics in Africa are coordinating and collaborating in coming up with these standards, in sharing, having peer exchanges and skills exchanges like this. And the more we can use these solutions, the more they will find, they will become better. I'll give a very final example. Around data specifically, when I used to do open data for the government, and we would push ministries to open up information, but then they would ask, so who's using this information? Are we just exposing ourselves? So the more you use solutions, the more you use resources that are there, that also encourages people to continue innovating and to continue doing better. So standards and guidelines around the data collection, sensitization around the existence of these solutions and their use, and then also championing solutions that actually work and challenging those that don't.
Thank you for those. And I think those guidelines tend to be enshrined within policy. And, you know, Betsy coming from an academic institution, like there is also that opportunity, even as you're training the next professionals of data scientists, statisticians, computer scientists, to ensure that there is like also training on ethical frameworks and how to ensure that when they are in charge of this kind of information, they are, you know, taking care of privacy, data protections, etc. How is academia, or how can academia support whether it's the enshrining of these standards into policy, but ensuring that when AI gets into the statistics systems and beyond in the broader data ecosystem, that it is equitable, you know, it's inclusive, and that we have the right governance frameworks in place.
Right. So for us, at least at Strathmore, we try and ingrain ethics. So for our students, there's always an ethics module and critical thinking module, just to inform the conscience, right? You can teach someone ethics, and then when they go there, they'll do what they want. But at least you have informed their conscience, so you have that at the back of your mind around what is ethical, what is right. And it's true, sometimes, you know, you can build AI products that would browse. So like, how do you get your data? You collected this data with a specific purpose, but then you reuse it without, you know, you have to go back to the participant and say, we are going to reuse this data in this other way that wasn't initially said. How many people do that? And it can be quite expensive to do that, right? We do try. And then in terms of frameworks, I think statistics traditionally has very high rigor when it comes to statistical methods, looking at how did you collect the data, was it representative, does the method fit the distribution, are there missing data, is it missing at random? That's AI sort of ignored, but now it's coming back in the form of responsible AI. So teaching responsible AI in terms of, for your model, you're not just looking at overall accuracy or performance, you're also looking at group level accuracy and performance. And there are so many frameworks that have been open sourced to enable you to, as you are training and testing, for you to be able to follow. And I think what could be missing is guidelines around synthetic data. So we've talked about personal data and people holding data, but can we generate synthetic data that can be released to the public to use? Safaricom has a lot of data that could be made synthetic for research that protects privacy. I don't know if I saw that in the data governance policy, to provide those provisions for synthetic data generation for research and other cross purposes. There's also participatory governance model. So how do you ensure that the data owners, or the data owners, because we're all custodians, so they're the people who own the data, participate in how their data is going to be used downstream, right? So you've collected it for a specific purpose. How does it get applied beyond that? So you've collected my data for mobile money, but then it goes to credit score me for hustle fund. So those type. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
You can give a comment.
So those are some of the things that we are trying with responsible AI, but there are still things that emerge continuously. Yeah.
Thanks. I guess that's a starting point for you. But as you're commenting on that, I think the partnership you have with KNBS is the kinds of partnerships that we are hoping to see other institutions also having, for instance, banks and public sector or what have you. I know you said you're in the weeds with the data, but what do you think makes such partnerships work? What are those data sharing frameworks that need to be in place, like, you know, the practical side of these governance models, to ensure that, of course, you're protecting your customer database, your competitive advantage, but you're now contributing to this data for good initiative. And then secondly, it will be also interesting to hear how, you know, these marginalized communities show up now in the systems. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, and thank you, Dr. Betsy, for putting me on the spot. So maybe let me just start by saying that I think the fundamental principle that we should all focus on is building trust. And from the comment from Dr. Betsy, it shows that there is some level of mistrust. And having personally been close to the Hustler Fund and how it came to life, I can assure you that we don't use any privately held data for Hustler Fund scoring. So there is no way it ends up in the Hustler Fund scorecard. I thought I should get that out of the way. So just, yeah. So just on a light note, probably as I proceed, I think if you follow the social media platforms, maybe trust in Safaricom might not be two words that go together from the public perception that is there. And I think for us, the biggest opportunity we have is to build that trust that you guys have entrusted us with your data and that we'll be good custodians of that data. I think in a different forum, we can speak about, we can try to alleviate some of those fears and possibly explain that we are not snitches as you guys have, put us on the spot. Yeah, in a different forum, we'll speak about it. But just to say is that good data practices are done at by design, all right? So as a data architect, as I architect a data asset or a data product, I need to have anonymization in mind, all right? I need to have data minimization in mind. And by data minimization, I mean for the solution that I'm building for, am I just giving enough of the data that is needed rather than giving a whole lot more data than is necessary? So as a data architect, I have to think about that. As a data architect, I have to think about the biases that are inherently introduced in data by way of generation and collection. Just to give perspective, from a telco side, not every one of us has, let's say, a phone. Not every one of us who has a phone has a smartphone. There is a significant population of our country that still uses feature phones. And not every person in the population is digitally savvy. If you compare how a 20-year-old will use their phone versus me, a 30-something-year-old, versus my grandmother, who is an 80-something-year-old, is quite different. And therefore, that introduces segments of the population that behave differently. So when we design for these data assets, whether it is for commercial purposes or for the humanity good, data for good, we ought to design these products with these segments in mind. We ought to design these data products, with the mentality of, or with the objective of solving for just lack of a better word, who will be the end user, all right? Will these insights that will come out of these assets land to the right person? And what purpose are they going to use this?
Great, and those, that treatment before that you talked about, anonymization, minimization, ideally is what would be part of similar initiatives engaging private sector, public sector, and opening up data for good. Now, coming to you, Liliana, you talked about how at the use level, there still needs to be support, for instance, for official statistics to show up in as Lynette was saying, whether or it's in parliamentary proceedings or whatever to support with that research. But how then do we support these statistical institutions, one, to remain sustainable as they're setting up these AI systems within the statistics data ecosystem? I mean, I'm sure they might not have the same data lake house. That was a new one I learned today. I know about data lakes and data warehouses. They might not have the data lake houses set up yet, depending on who you're working with, but how do we support then those initiatives to take off to remain sustainable? And then once the AI is part of the statistical ecosystem, it is actually in use for whether it's public policy planning or evidence-based decision making within both private and public sector.
Thank you. And again, of course, as soon as we're talking about sustainability, we are coming to old problems. Of course, this is our preoccupation all the time. What does it mean to be sustainable for statistics office in a low and middle income country today in 2026? Well, it's really tough. And let me start with the global picture. The development cooperation funding is really plummeting. So we have huge donors that used to support statistical system in Africa, and that support to data per se has been growing over the years since 2010 until 2023. That's when we have the latest data. But we also know today, 2026, that some of the biggest donors, including US, but also some of the bilateral and multilateral, but also philanthropies donors are stepping back. Right, and of course the AI industry per se is also sucking some of these resources. And how are we going to navigate that? What does it mean for African statistics to survive this? That's a big question that we're also trying to understand. So there's lots of discussions about national ownership of data, right? So how do we support official statistics to be domestically funded? How do we make sure that policymakers recognize the value of that investment, and how they can also rally for more funding from new donors, from whether this is private sector, whether this is new engaging also global South-South collaboration, because that's also an emerging topic. So a big question. So we like to go back to basics. Like as a statistical agency, you really need to know what's your need, where are you falling short. And in today's environment of AI pressure, I think this is not really serving us, because I mean the pressure and the speed is also a business strategy. So as soon as you're being hurried up, you are in the FOMO mode, fear of missing out, and you don't stop and reflect, what do you really need as an agency? Where is your gap? And what's your priority? And that's a huge problem. So we do recognize that, and we encourage statistical agencies to also stop for a minute and reflect, okay, where do you really need AI? Is AI going to solve all of your problems? Let's reflect. So I like this kind of vision and leadership to be there with statistics offices. We want to make sure that this is taken on board. Of course, partnerships are there. So there's still, if you move here alongside all the rooms, we talk partnerships. Our name is a partnership. But what works, right? We have different powers in our partnership. How do we use those respective powers? At the international community, we like to talk about values. So are our values aligned? Are we talking the same language, the same principles? And are we asking the right questions? Are we asking the same questions of what works for countries? And are we seeing the whole value chain of data, or not just little pieces of that puzzle? I think these are some of the important things. And of course, AI use for good is a huge question also for statistics office. So we know where AI is designed. We have been talking about bias just now, missing statistics in AI chatbots and missing voices, right? So what kind of partnerships make sense to have these voices reflected in official statistics? What kind of partnership can ensure that citizens are visible beyond GDP, beyond national averages, and what makes data being usable?
Thank you so much. I think we've set the scene in terms of what you're calling those inclusive collaborations, whether it's through the data sharing agreements, how grassroots data shows up in statistics systems, how we're keeping the systems sustainable, and generally now placing AI, data science, machine learning at the core of this data ecosystem that we're building that goes beyond the national statistics ecosystem. With that being said, I'm sure there are some questions, whether it's related to what they've said or what their background is from the audience. So I'll give us a few minutes to do that, and as we start, the other side of the P exchange. Thanks.
If we were to use births and deaths to determine population, how will we account for the people who move out of our regions and also unreported births and deaths?
It would be great to introduce yourself as well.
Yes, my name is Boaz Moyo from KNBS.
Probably you should be giving us your thinking about that, and then our panelists can add to it.
Okay, allow me to stand. My name is Daniel, a data analyst for AR Healthcare Kenya. I think I had maybe just a minute or a few seconds to say one. When you talk about collaboration and equitable, I know panelists have talked about trust, but data is a fact. So the creator of that data has already created it. So the next point you interact with that data is when you use it. So the question is, what did you create? Will you go back and recreate it? When you are going to trust and collaborate that you have done and collected the right thing, will you ever change it? Those are facts. AI is artificial intelligence. It means it's man-made. We've created it. But then when you talk about Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, you say these are official statistics. For example, Safaricom has, and I know we've discussed in the room talking about private sector data. That's data. Data doesn't know whether it's official, it's fact, it exists. But the question is, do you have policies that say whatever that data that you're sharing across board communicates to the specific needs? We set data indicators, parameters that we collect. What purpose are they addressing? And I believe there is global, things change. I work in a healthcare field. The question is, if I was to take a sample in this data and all of us have the same strain, it doesn't matter the race. We'll have the same strain of malaria. So the question is, will we get the same medication? So the next question we need to ask ourselves is, Safaricom collects data addressing a specific problem. So data, even from government perspective, have we collected, have we communicated properly with that data? You can have so many tools, but as long as then you read it subjectively, you'll address an objective that is that subjective. Thank you.
We'll get one more question, and then I hope you're thinking of the ones you want to answer.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, my name is Peter Nielsen. I'm also a partner of KMBS, like Liliana. So I can start, before my question, I can do a short commercial break. I think this week something happened on the data scene in Kenya. Maybe they have been releasing a new time series for almost everything they have in this portal. Maybe not the best name, I think, Open Data Portal 2. Should be called maybe Kenya's official national database or something. But this is a great thing actually happening. So now, actually the AI hasn't picked it up yet. If you ask I see them, can give me the time series of CPI, food inflation, but it's there, out there actually on the webpage. So it's good for everyone to know. It's downloadable. AI readiness data is out in Kenya this week, so this is kind of a big thing. But yeah, but back to the more kind of maybe negative tune, picking up what Liliana talked about, the global scene of less funds and less partners and that kind of scene. I mean, I've been in Kenya for a couple of years now, and I think we had a lot of data science and AI and that kind of things this week, and I think this picking up in Kenya as well. You have a lot of talented persons and a lot of practical good examples. But we haven't talked much about data. I mean, we talked about Safaricom data now here, but the challenge in my book is, at least, is kind of the lack of data in Kenya. We really don't use data so much in official statistics. We have enormously amounts of administered data out there, not maybe in the best shape, maybe not the way it could be used directly, but we still kind of depending on this kind of funds of large surveys cost a fortune to make, not very timely, every 10 years the census, maybe, you know, everything is 5 years, yearly, that kind of things. We don't have any labor force data in Kenya. I don't know how much unemployment is, really don't know how much how large the labor force is either. It's not very timely, not very regular, but there is data, but it's not used. So my question, maybe not easy to answer, is kind of how do we kind of change this landscape going forward to kind of using the data that is out there, but not kind of helping the country to really describe. I mean, it's the big thing. We can talk about data here and there, but the kind of main data products needs to be there. The GDP, the inflation, the labor force could be improved, yeah? And it's possible, but it's not done. So how do you think we can use the admin data going forward and skip this kind of ridiculous service going on?
Well, the person who would have been best to answer your question has just stepped out, but we'll put it on hold for a minute as we let panelists address the questions that have been asked so far.
I will address two questions, one from Peter and the question that you asked on population. So starting with the population estimates. In Pittsburgh, I had the privilege of going to Carnegie Mellon University. At the Museum of Natural History, as you walk in, there's a clock, and it tells you the population of Pittsburgh at any given time, because the hospitals are interconnected. So at any given point when our birth is recorded, when our death is recorded, that clock updates. There is an organization called the World Data Lab that has what we call the World Population Clock, and they say it's a clock that tells you when you're going to die, and it uses publicly available data to estimate, to look at life expectancy rates, and with some nice economic formula, and you know, it tells you at any given point how long people around the world are going to live for. This is to say that we have an opportunity, and maybe just linking it to what Peter is saying around the use of data, we have an opportunity to really be at the forefront of this kind of use of data in an integrated way. But then we do not have the structures and the infrastructure really that allows for that to happen. I was going to argue, you know, you talked about how do we manage, you know, births and deaths that are not recorded. That is why error rates exist in mathematics. But then, even where you don't have the 2 to 3, you know, plus or minus, do we have the 97 in place in a really good way and in a timely way? You know, some hospitals don't give you a birth notification. You have to go to Huduma Center. So there's a birth in a hospital, but it's going to be 2-3 weeks before you actually get that notification. So it's going to be 2-3 weeks before the government can actually record, you know, that birth or that death. So things like those really, for me, present an opportunity for us to build the infrastructure. And as I'm not just talking about Kenya, but specifically, I'm passionate about African governments and countries, to be able to build that infrastructure to, you know, to give us timely information that is also useful. I'll let Victor talk about the NPD data. I have a lot to say, but I won't mention anything there. And then, Peter, in terms of the use of data, in 2017, I wrote a paper called The Politics of Data. And I was really investigating why people use or don't use, share or don't share data. And when you come to government, there's a lot of data from KNBS. But unfortunately, the president of Kenya, do not use this against me, can most comfortably quote Bloomberg, but not the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Our students, if you've done your, undergrad or master's or PhD, if you look at your bibliography or reference list, you will most likely not find a local author. You will be quoting, authors from the global north. And that is a big problem. Most recently, you've seen the tussle between, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the Minister for Planning, where the, KNBS sits under. There is big mistrust, going back to trust. And how do you build that trust? And that is why I insist that we have to keep championing good solutions. KNBS, just like most national bureaus of statistics in the continents, is doing a fantastic job in collecting the data, in sharing the data, in disseminating the data as, raw data sets, as AI-ready data, as, publications. But then the folks who are doing policy have politicized the process of policy making in such a way that it looks like no one is using data. I used to argue, how do you think, capitation for schools happens? They have to know how many students there are, right? The government, the Ministry of Education has to know how many students there are before, you fund schools. But then because a school is from a region you come from, and as a minister, you stop being a technocrat, you're a politician, you have to give more money to the school where you come from, just in case this job ends and you have to go back and become a member of parliament. So those are some of the things that we really need to start thinking about and really questioning. I personally think that, our institutions collect fantastic information. But the use of that information has been politicized because data use, and that's the politics of data use is how will it tell a story that is favorable to me? So whether it comes from official statistics or not. Someone would rather say, according to Twitter, according to Kenyans on Twitter, this is what is happening in the economy, but not quote official statistics because it's not in their favor.
Wow. I don't know if I'll keep the same pace and rigor, but I would like to add, just before I respond to the question on immigration data. Let me disclose that I have worked with the government on some of the initiatives, and I would say that there is a problem. So there was a time that we were providing some technical advice to the government, especially on the SHA project. Oh, all right. SHA is our local health authority, social health authority. So, the big objective is to ensure that healthcare is provided to the Kenyan population. So, when they were building the means testing tool, it was a bit crude at first, all right? A lot of rules and less of data. So when we came in to give some technical advice, we quickly realized that government data is not easily available, it's not centralized, and it's not easily shareable across government institutions. It took the intervention of the president to give a directive for different government departments to share their own form of data. So why am I saying this? There is an opportunity, and I would pick on the model that the US government has, whereby they have a chief data office that is responsible for all the government data sets in a central place. such that when somebody needs to make use of that data, they know exactly where to go to. Now, coming back to the immigration question, I would say that probably government should pull up their socks if they are putting on their socks, because I think government maintains the overall visibility of who gets in and out of the country. I have gotten out of the country several times, and the best I could see is just my passport being stamped, right? So I am not sure whether we are electronically recording that piece of information for use somewhere, or does it just remain as a stamp on my passport, all right? So I think government needs to rethink their strategy around how they collect data, and if we have that rethink, then we will solve for the immigration problem. We will know exactly where Asila is at any particular time, whether he is in Kenya or he's outside, and which particular country Asila has traveled to. Now, for the private sector, I think there is a bit in which we do have visibility of who is in and out of the country, all right? So whenever you move out of the country, there is that roaming service that telcos will provide to you. So to us, it comes as a roaming signal, and therefore we can tell that this person is not within the Kenyan jurisdiction. So I think in the partnership with the KNBS, we can provide such insights, but I would say that we will not cover the whole population, as it were, because in as much as we are the dominant telco, there is also a significant portion of our population that prefers our competitors, and therefore that data point as to whom has moved out of the country is constricted within what we can see within the Safaricom ecosystem.
Did you want to speak a little bit to the youth? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just on the trust again, bringing the official statistics voice here. What makes data trusted? What makes institutions share their data? It's again something that the international community has been trying to guess. It's a holy grail. Unpacking the trust, I think you have to see what makes an institution being trusted. Why would you trust KNBS data? Or why would you not trust KNBS data, right? Like you say. So you have to understand how these institutions function. So for statistics office to be trusted is to work under a law, right? And there's statistics law. Currently, KNBS is submitting a new draft for the parliament to be adopted so that they can become an independent institution. Now, independent institution is what? It's professional independence, but also institutional independence, right? Independence also means where they get money from, right? So today they belong to a ministry. That's why there may be certain issues of trust that you have been raising, and that's a fair point. So to become an independent institution is a whole journey, but you also have to understand how that works for those institutions to work. And that data sharing journey is a long one, but it's going to happen. Like I was informed, the State Department for Gender is going to launch a huge platform to share gender indicators from across the board from admin data systems, and this is going to happen as we talk. KNBS is working also with various stakeholders. So today they have been, just before the session in this room, they will be launching a platform whereby if you own a mobile in Kenya, you can type through dialing, you can get official statistics back to you on certain topics, and this is going to be growing as well, right? So there's plenty of civil society actors that are pushing the boundary of trust as well, so that people can see themselves in the data, and once they see themselves in the data, they are also more prone to trust it.
Thank you. I wanted to put someone here on the spot to help answer your question on administrative data. And what is Kenya doing to unlock that administrative data? The question was like that it exists, but there are some indicators that are not visible or are not timely produced. So I know Kenya has an initiative to utilize data as a, to recognize data as a factor of production, as an economic asset. So I just wanted to give Director Cecilia here like 2 minutes to talk about the data governance policy and why that's important for that.
Thank you. We, together with different stakeholders, have drafted a national data governance policy. And this policy is to enable us harness the value of data. We take note that we have the Data Protection Act that emphasizes on the personal data, but there's so much other data, administrative data, public data, anonymized data, synthetic data that can be used for innovation, that can be used by researchers. And the whole spirit of the policy is to drive and to ensure that data is a strategic national asset. It's critical for production, it's critical for decision making, as well as being used for the public good to benefit every person within the nation. And this will be escalated to various forms. I know people are against centralized data systems. We are looking at a federated approach. We're looking at the data owners still having their data, but still having that shareability and interoperability of the data. Thank you.
So hopefully, as the initiatives within the policy are being enacted, I think it will be easier to share data across the board and surface it faster from non-personal data such as administrative data. We should be winding down in 3 minutes. I know there were some questions still in the room, but I know the morning session started a bit late, so I'll give us 5 minutes to take 2 more questions in case there are any, and then we'll wrap up and call it a day. So, final questions? Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Helena Pila with SDGs Kenya Forum. Picking the story of citizen-generated data, both Liliana and Lynette have spoken about it. I think Kenya has made progress. We acknowledge that, but we also realize that the civil society organizations are producing a lot of data that is still sitting and not harnessed. I think maybe to hear from both Liliana and Lynette, from your experience, why is it that we've not been able to adequately harness that opportunity? From where I sit, I think the feedback we get from civil society organizations is that the guidelines are very stringent, and so civil society organizations have continued to produce data outside the guidelines, and then it's not meeting the criteria. But you'll notice that if you go to the county governments, when any sector officer who is planning or making a decision, they will refer to the civil society produced data. And so how do we address that gap? Maybe that's the critical question to take forward.
Great. I think this is where Leo wanted me to go at the beginning, so I'll go there now. Acknowledging that limitation that there is, and for good reason, I would say, because of the standards and quality that are expected of government initiatives. At Data Science Limited, we have created the Open Data Initiative, which is very complementary to what KNBS is doing. But one that is open to the public, so it's going to be a data exchange. It's on opendata.co.ke. It allows for individuals, researchers, we have PhD students, master students who collect data, who have the data, do not know where to put it. If they wanted to open it up, we have civil society organizations that do the same. So they should be able to log in and actually upload their data. The standards, we don't want to say that the standards are more lenient, but they are not as strict because it's also encouraging that culture of opening up information. And what the exchange does, it also allows people to trade with the data. So there are people who've also spent a lot of money collecting the data, and they would like, to a certain extent, to get a return from it. What we have is that one should be able to, from that data set, potentially share the aggregates as open data, and the raw data, then they can be able to sell it. So if someone wanted to download that data, they should be able to do that. So this is for academia, for civil society, for government institutions, and for individuals, especially researchers, who are putting together data sets that then end up living in their computers. It might not be the perfect solution, but in my very results-oriented engineering mind, it's a starting point, and we welcome everyone to, visit the website, give us, your feedback in case there's any other way that, we could improve it, so that we start that culture going, and over time, hopefully, we'll get more people sharing data, because then it can become useful data, even if it doesn't live on a government website. Thanks.
Thank you so much, I mean, I'd say it's a great question, and of course I recognize that the voice of civil society is missing in the data science discussions. It's missing when we talk about AI, data governance setups, and that's a huge problem to me. So how do we integrate citizen voices in official statistics? It's a whole journey as well. So statisticians, government statisticians, they are working according to the fundamental principles of official statistics. It's a set of 10 values that ideally should guide them, and it's a principle, it's not a very stringent framework. They should guide them in ensuring that data is trusted and is collected in an ethical way, in a scientifically robust way. Now, when it comes to how do we do it, there is also guidance at the international level, United Nations National Quality Assurance Frameworks. But these frameworks, with their quality dimensions, they are established for official statistics. And we see official statisticians in various countries, including Kenya, they departed from applying these very stringent criteria to citizen data, which has absolutely different origin and different ways of being collected. It doesn't make this data less of a quality. It's just a different type of data, and it's a valid data as well. So how do we find pathways and platforms to bridge those two? It's a huge question. At the global level, there's people also started to scratch their heads around this problem. So there's this collaborative on citizen data, which we are also part of, which tries to bridge that information and gathers various statistics offices and civil society actors to see what is being done in different countries. So integration is another topic. What does it mean to integrate? Is it to integrate in official statistics surveys? Is it to integrate ad hoc when governments need data for something? It's a whole open question as well. Again, what kind of quality principles are we applying? There's a huge discussion now whether ethics should be part of quality dimensions, right? Because ethics is really one of the key principles that's driving here the citizen data. What does it mean to take data? Are we allowed to take data just because we can from communities, right? What do we do with communities that are just over-surveyed? And data protection is still a huge question to be answered. So, of course, plenty of questions, but there is pathways through champions, as you said, pushing boundaries of what is possible. And I'm hopeful that we can have some good pathways towards showcasing. And Kenya is definitely a trailblazer in that area.
Thank you. There was a burning question, but keep it to 30 seconds, and then the response will also be another 30 seconds.
Yeah, sure, I will. My name is Zedi from Icon Data. I've been listening to the conversations, very beautiful. And one thing that is coming into my mind is that as the national official statistics, if we're expecting organizations to share citizen-generated data, what are the incentives that we could put in place? And also in terms of measuring and also impact, how can we measure and detail or document progress beyond that which is stated in the policy document? Thank you.
Sorry, I think my cache is a little bit full. Could you just repeat the incentives part? For sharing data. I think I had hinted to it. I think for the private sector perspective, the incentive should be data for good. And I'll give an example of a few things that we are doing from a Safaricom perspective as an incentive, to uplift the population. So, number one, we are investing in our network so that we ensure that there's a lot of inclusivity by way of coverage, network coverage. So if you are keen in the financial markets, at some point last year, we went into the market for a commercial paper to get money to invest in the expansion of our network capacity, which I think is currently at 60%, and we want to expand that to a little bit more. So by expanding the network, then we ensure that people in the underserved areas are able to connect to the network. And number two, we have a good product that is called Lipa Mdogo Mdogo, whereby the mission is to transition customers who have 2G or feature phones into more trendy smartphones, all right? Which ensures that customers are able to access services that come digitally. Number two, we also ensure that we provide products and services that are quite affordable. In as much as we are a commercial entity, but we need to ensure that we provide our products at the right price point so that more people are able to afford those products. And as I was speaking, I just went back to some time last year. I was looking at some data, and I was astonished to discover that on the financial inclusion bit, we have around 12 million adults in Kenya who do not have access to financial products because of lack of data, right? So as a telco, what we can do is to provide alternative data sets that can provide an insight into the behavior of these customers, and therefore enabling the lenders to reach out to these customers and provide them their services at, of course, affordable rates, all right? So I hope that answers the question of incentives. We have a commercial incentive, but overall, we want to ensure that we do embark on a data for good initiative.
So the incentive is to get more customers in the future, in political speak.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I like the sentence you started with. I wanted to flip it up with the conversation. The data for good. And who is designing what is a good, right? So I hear your point on how do we make citizens' voices heard in designing data systems and solutions that are good for them, right? And I think for the incentives, we really have to think of also agencies. If tools and solutions are designed without us at the table, as citizens, how do we want to make it use? Of course, we don't trust it because we don't know what's going to happen once we give out the data. And some of the communities are just over-surveyed here, also here in Kenya, right? And there are problems that are actually suffering from statistical silence. There's absolutely no data on certain topics. And I'm here thinking of certain also AI problems, right? How data centers are impacting our communities, right? How Kenyan people who are actually training AI models in those data facilities, watching horrific videos. What's happening to them? Are they getting help? How is AI impacting our lives? This is the future measurement that statistics offices hopefully will embark one day. But of course, we need that voice. And if you look at activities done by civil society, there's plenty of them. Of course, they also need to embark and jump on that train of AI to be heard. There's no way around. But for us, I think development partners here in the room, there's also a huge responsibility to hear that voices and bring that voice which is not heard to the room and to the conversation.
Thank you.
Just a very quick one. There's some research from the World Bank that showed that when they actually started opening up their data, the sales of their publications at the library in DC went up. So when you share data, beyond the commercial incentives, you also allow people to look at it. When you're thinking about quality issues, someone can point something out that the team might have missed. So I tend to look at, opening up your information as a way to get free, consultants from people who will be very critical, but then will give you, some very interesting insights to the data that you have. Your data being used also, squarely places you as a good, primary data source as well, and you could get more business from that. Yesterday, Karen from Safaricom mentioned that it's from the data that they have been able to come up with other products, including, what Victor is talking about. So opening up information tends to do that. So beyond the immediate commercial incentive, there's also, the long term that comes out of more people actually having access to it.
Yeah. So, thank you so much for being an attentive audience. I would have done a round of wrap-up, but I don't want us to go too far in. However, I hope you guys will be around for like 15 minutes, and you can get hold of them. But I'm grateful for your insights, for your input, and this brings us to the end of this session. I think this is a conversation that just based on what you said and what is needed to move forward when we look at statistical organizations beyond Kenya across the developing countries, there's still work to be done to make AI work well within the system, but also to achieve that impact that we are hoping to be able to ensure statistics are timely, accurate, and of high quality. So thank you so much. There is one AOB. The media team would like to take a group photo. So I will give them a chance to direct us to do this, and then I will break us after that. Okay, okay, I guess just for the panelists. All right, sorry, you guys are not that important.